By some forward miracle, we're not even running too far behind. So we are to the last chapter of this session. I think you probably all saw the great demo this morning that Bogdan did showing Studio X as we unveiled that. We're now going to have the chance to go a little bit deeper and spend 20 to 25 minutes digging into how business users can build processes with Studio X. So join me in welcoming Bogdan to the stage, and we'll finish the session out.
So hello, everybody. I'm Bogdan Ripa. For those of you who were there this morning, who managed to wake up, I gave you a quick preview of what Studio X is. It was only 5 minutes. Now we have a little bit more time, so we're going to go a little bit more into depth. As I was mentioning, Studio X is all about enabling your employees, your business users, to automate their own work, their own tasks. It is about task automation. It's not exactly about process automation. And if we look at where we are today, there's this long tail of automations that are just waiting there that nobody's looking at because there's just not enough ROI into putting your COE developers and asking them to help those individuals with their very specific tasks that they're trying to automate. So while you have a number of processes, the high ROI processes that are being automated using Studio by RPA developers, the long tail is being forgotten about. And this is where Studio X comes in. This is why we've built this tool, so that we can enable everybody to go out there and automate their own work. Yep. So if we look at Studio today, the process is the following. You have your business analyst that identifies a process. They go into the business. They understand. They talk to the subject matter experts. And then they go and they document all this process. They create the PDDs. They talk to the RPA developers. They hand over. A lot of the times, there's a lot of business exceptions that are not being treated. So there's a lot of back and forth. And at the end, you have somebody like an RPA admin that goes there and schedules those processes. This is today's workflow. With Studio X, what we see is that the business analyst or the subject matter expert, they are the ones who do everything. They identify the task, they create the automation, they run the automation, and they analyze the results. They can do all of those things by themselves. They don't need anybody else. And as I was mentioning this morning, this new product is available today. So you go to our website, you hit the download button, you get the community edition. As you open it up, it's going to ask you, what mode do you want to be in? Studio or Studio X. Studio X is like a profile in Studio. There's nothing else that you need to do, and then you can switch between them. Studio license gives you access to Studio X as well. And as a community user, you just get the community version of our product. You license it using community, and that's it, really. You just go ahead and start using it. So with that, maybe we can have some time for some Q&A. I'll try to walk over a different use case than what I showed this morning. This morning, what I showed was getting data from a spreadsheet, iterating over rows in a spreadsheet, and adding that data, inputting that data into a business application using UI activities. Now we're going to do something else. Again, live demo, so hopefully everything will work fine. I haven't done this one in a while, though. So if we can switch to my computer, please. Yep, OK. So the demo that I'm going to show goes as following. What I will do is go into my Outlook account, go into a specific folder in my Outlook account, iterate, process all the emails in that folder. And by process, what I mean is I want to get all the attachments from those emails and save them to a folder on my hard drive. Okay, so download all the attachments from this Outlook folder onto my drive. And then what I want to do is take those attachments one by one and rename them to include today's date in the name of the file. A lot of the times, especially if you work in accounting, you do a lot of these things. You have a folder with the current date, and then every day you copy stuff in that folder and you process it, and tomorrow you're going to get a new folder with, again, the current date in the name of the folder or in the name of the files. So this is something that we've seen customers doing over and over again, and this is why I'm trying to replicate this workflow. So the other thing that you should know is that every Studio X project comes with a predefined workspace, an Excel file. Okay, Studio X is not only about automating Excel, but we are relying a lot on Excel because business users, there's concepts that they don't understand, like variables and data types, but they do understand things like, cell A3 in Excel. And it's like a variable, that cell anyway, right? But they don't think about it that way. So as I said, every new project comes with an Excel spreadsheet attached to it. And in that spreadsheet, there's a lot of helper functions. Okay, somebody that knows how to use Excel, they could, for example, if I give you a full name of an employee, and if I ask you to split it by first name and last name, I could probably do that in Excel using Excel formulas, right? If I ask you to take the current date and format it in a way like YYYYMMDD, I could probably do that in Excel if I know how to use Excel. So the default spreadsheet that StudioX comes with has a lot of those formulas and a lot of those helper functions pre-built in them. And we encourage users to go ahead and actually add their own pre-built functions because they might have things that they're already using somehow. So let's see, let's do this. First thing I want to do is I will tell StudioX that I want to use my Outlook account. Okay, so I hit that plus button. One of the common scenarios is, yep, use my Outlook account. And here it goes into my local Outlook, and you can see that it uses the default email account. I could have multiple email accounts on my Outlook, so I could work with a specific one. In this case, I'll just say, yep, use whatever default email account I have. And I hit plus, and one thing that you will see is the list of common scenarios have changed now. And that's because I'm inside an Outlook application card, and as I hit the plus button, there are things that have to do with Outlook, right? If I tell you I want to work with Outlook, what would be the next action that I could take? Well, if you're working with Outlook, you might want to send an email, you might want to process emails, you might want to, I don't know, create a calendar invite, reply to an email, and so forth, right? And one of the options here is iterate through emails. That's exactly what I want to do. And just like I showed this morning, this little plus button comes in handy, and it's also contextual. So because I want to iterate over emails, I say, yeah, I want to iterate over emails in my Outlook account. And I can say iterate over a selected email. So I could select some emails and then run this process, and it will process the emails that I have selected in my Outlook account. Or I can just say, actually, what I want to do is iterate over emails in my drafts folder. And I've done this before, so I know there's a few emails there. And this, right now, I'm iterating, and at this point, I'm looking at one email, right? So I'm processing one email at a time. Now, what can I do with one email? Again, I hit this plus button, and now because I'm looking at one email, it gives me a number of common scenarios. I could reply to that email. I could forward that email. Or I could iterate through its attachments, okay? And it asks me, where do you want to save those attachments? And on my desktop, I have a folder called in, and I will save them there. So now what happens is that it added this activity called Save Mail Attachments from the current mail. Again, this is something that I have access to here using the dropdown. I don't want to filter them. I want to save them here. And then it's iterating over those files. So let me move this one down here. OK, so now it's going to save the attachments, and then it's going to iterate over the files in that folder. So let's run this. Let's see how far we got. So my in folder, it's empty. I don't have anything in it. And I'm running it. And we should see files starting to pop up into that specific folder any second now as it runs. There we go. OK, so now my in folder has these files. These are files that were attached to emails from my drafts Outlook folder. OK, you're following me so far? All good? OK, perfect. I'm going to delete this. And next, now I'm iterating over these files, right? I'm iterating. I have a for each file in folder, meaning I'm iterating over files in this folder. And what I want to do with every one of these files, I want to take it and move it to that other folder while renaming it. OK, this is what I said I wanted to do. So for that, I will start by adding a move file activity. And it asks me, where do you want to move it from? Where do you want to move it to? And the from, I will say, again, I'm iterating over the current file. So I want to get the full path of the current file. I could get the name, the folder, and so forth. Those are properties, file properties, right? So I say I want to get the full path, and I want to move it to the out folder. Okay? And yeah, let's say I want to overwrite it if it's already there. So this is just going to move the file. It's not going to rename the file while moving it. It's just moving the file from one folder to the next. But if I want to rename that file, how do I do that? Well, I was telling you that we have that workspace, the default workspace that every automation comes with. So I'll open it right now. And here on the bottom, you have a number of sheets. Every sheet, it tells me, here are some date functions. Here are some text functions, number, and file system, right? And for example, the text functions, I was giving you as an example that full name. If I want to split it by first name and last name, I would just write here, let's say Bogdan Ripa, and automatically I have here the formula in Excel on how to extract the first name and how to extract the last name, right? So this is like examples of helper functions. And under file here, what I have is some file system, file name helper functions. So given an input, the full name of a file, it can get me extract the actual file name, extract the extension, the file name without the extension, and the folder where that file is, right? So I built all that in Excel using Excel formulas. I'm not an Excel master. I just Googled for it, and I found ways of doing that. And then I have this other field here called reformatted file name. And I will use this reformatted file name so that given this as an input, it will add that current date into this file. And here under date, I already have this formatted date. So this is a text of date and a specific format. So year, month, date. I have it here. And I also gave it a name, this cell. Excel has this function, this feature where you can take a specific cell or a range and give it a name cell, right? So here under file, right now what we have is it's concatenating the file name without extension, dot, and the file name extension. So what I will do is say I want to add a dash, and then I want to add the current date, formatted this way, come on. And then dot and the file extension. So you can see here the name. I'm assuming you can see it. There you go. You can see here the name of the file that is reformatted. OK, so all good so far. So what I need to do now, I was looping over the files in that folder here, right? So what I need to do right now is take the name of the file, actually write it in here. So let's see, test.txt. Actually write it in here. And then read this value here. So the name of this cell is full file name, and the name of this cell is reformatted file name. Okay? So if I just write the name of the file, the full name of the file here, and then I read it from here, I should get, when I read it, I should get the new file name that includes the current date and time in it, the current date. So to do that, just before this move file, I will say I want to write a cell. And what to write, what do I want to write? I want to write that full file name, okay? I think it's full path from the current file. And I want to write it into my workspace, into my file sheet, into, I think it was called full file name, okay? This specific cell. And you can see here again that Excel integration where we go down and we actually read the named cells. So you can easily point to them here. OK. So I wrote this down. And now as I move the file, instead of just specifying the folder where I want to move it, I come here and I say, I want to write it into the out folder, \, and I will add from my workspace the reformatted file name. So out \, and then I have the reformatted file name. This is the new file name where I want to move this. So I'll save this, and I think we're done, and we can simply just run the automation now. And as this runs, you might see this spreadsheet. Yeah, I don't know if you've seen that. That was pretty fast. It was changing really, really fast. And if I go back to my workspace, you can see here, C users Bogdan Ripa desktop in webapp.rar. This is one of those file names. And let's look in my input folder. Now the input folder is empty because it moved things. and it moved those things into the output folder. And I'm assuming you can see. I don't know how to zoom in here. But these file names, I have this one, for example, it's webapp-2019-1016, which is, we're on the 15th. OK, my computer is on Romanian time. It's 1 a.m. in Romania. So it's tomorrow. Yes, and that's why I did this. So in this automation, everything that happened, it was, it literally took my files, all my attachments from a specific folder in Outlook, copied them into the in folder, and then moved them into the out folder while renaming them. This is something that if I were to do the same thing in Studio, it would take me probably more time. I don't really like Visual Basic development, so I always have to go and Google this type of things. But like formatting a date to a specific format and concatenating and all those things is not something that easy to do, even in Studio. So you have to know a little bit of code. You have to know how to think about that. Here, what I did was literally we didn't have to write any line of code. We didn't have to do any mumbo jumbo. I used my existing Excel skills to be able to do reformatting of content, and then I use the provided activities to be able to do everything else that I needed to. So that's an easy example. I have another one really fast that I want to run that I had prepared. How many of you heard about RPA challenge? OK, good. So RPA challenge, it's a website that was built so that it can test how great RPA frameworks and RPA products are when it comes to automating that specific tool. And the challenge of automating that tool is that every time it refreshes, it changes. It changes the way the UI looks, the way the controls, the user interface controls are aligned, their IDs, and there's a bunch of stuff that changes. And if I tried to automate that with StudioX, the beauty of it is that in StudioX, when we target elements by label. And we don't just look at the selector of the elements like we do in Studio. We look at the label, and then we identify what's the input text next to that label. That's very similar to what Cosmin was showing with computer vision. It's a similar technology, but applied for not necessarily computer vision stuff. So if I will run this now, you will see that it will open, I think it's Internet Explorer or Chrome. I think it's IE. It will open IE and then just go through the RPA challenge as fast as it can. So it uses simulate clicks, and it uses, there you go. So this is how fast it can go and do the RPA challenge. And it should do it, let's see. That was nice, huh? For a business user to be able to do that, there you go, 8.3 seconds, 100% correctness, yeah. Yeah, so this is StudioX. We believe that anyone on the business side that have analytical thinking can start using it today. Again, it is available for download. You can go and get it, and you can play with it. We are very, very open to feedback. We're not in general availability yet because we want the feedback. So the sooner the feedback comes to us, the sooner we can continue to evolve the product, and the sooner we're going to be in GA. Our goal is to be in GA sometimes early next year, but it all depends on the feedback that we receive from you. And with that, yeah?
I'm curious, is this targeting attended bots?
Question is this targeting attended bots? Yes. So this StudioX is built so that you create attended automations. The reason behind it is because unattended automations require more development skills. You have to think about, but what happens if I don't find this button that I want to click? What happens? So in StudioX, the way we like to think about it is that you have the robot that's attending the user, and then you have the user that's attending the robot. So if the robot gets stuck, me as a user, I can say, oh, you can't find that button to click. That's because there's maybe a modal dialog on top of it. Let me click that modal dialog, let me move it away, and then have you retry. Or let me click that button for you, and now you can ignore it, and you can move next to the next step. So we see this robot to user, the robot helping the user helping the robot type symbiosis. Yep. How do we do exception handling? We don't. Really, I mean, if it's an exception, again, we throw it in the face of the user, and the user will have three options. Ignore, just move to the next activity, retry, or just cancel out. And that's it. And that's why this goes back to attended, unattended. The second, I will try to go to a business user and tell them, oh, you have to do a try-catch log here, and if there's an exception, based on the exception type, you need to do this or that, you lose them.
If you start in Studio X, can you toggle to
Yeah, so if you start in Studio X, can you toggle in Studio? The answer is yes. Studio X projects can be opened in Studio. The other way around, that's not the case. And then you can make changes in Studio, and most of the times you're going to be able to come back. It also depends on the type, how much you change the project. If you remove some of the variables that we rely on, then you're going to get an error as you try to open it in Studio.
Are you planning to have this available in Studio as well?
Are we planning to have this available in Studio as well? I'm assuming that by this, you mean the new way of clicking and typing. We call that unified target. The answer is yes. And the drop down with the Excel integration and Outlook integration, yeah, we're looking at ways of integrating that as well back into Studio. Today, they're not there. Today, they're hidden away, but we are looking at how we can enable that. The challenge with the unified target, so the new type of typing or clicking, is that we already have 5 ways of clicking a button today. You have click with selector, click image, click text, click OCR text, click computer vision. This would be a 6th one. So it's already confusing. We don't want to make it more confusing. We want it to step back, think it through, and then come with a proper solution. Yep. Yeah, so how does this fit with the existing governance model? It's 100% like Studio. So when you publish, if I hit the publish button, it's going to publish to Orchestrator or locally. Same thing as what you do with Studio today. We are looking at enabling more governance capabilities because unlike Studio, where you have 50 developers locked in a room and you can control them, more or less, with Studio X, you're going to have 10,000 people all over the business, and you don't know what they're doing. So we need more governance capabilities. They're not there yet, but we are definitely looking at adding more capabilities. It's about whitelisting applications, blacklisting applications, and so forth. But then the reality is that everything that you can do today with Studio X is things that me as a user, I could already do on my computer. It's not like it gives me new capabilities. It just it helps me automate what I'm already doing. Yeah. I know we're running out of time, but yeah. Yeah, so the Academy training we're developing it right now. As a substitute, if I hit F1 or go to the documentation, see help, product documentation, we have a dedicated documentation page with 7 or 8 tutorials. So if the goal and the way we view it is that if somebody goes through those tutorials, they will be able to do everything that, they will be able to start automating work. So one of the tutorials is the one that I just showed you as an example.
Can you run the Studio X workflows on an unattended robot?
Can you run Studio X workflows on unattended robots? In theory, you could, yes. But again, the expectation is that it is about attended automation. Let's not fool ourselves. What you can do, however, is have an attended user, a Studio X user, develop something, pass it to an RPA developer that repackages it as unattended and then deploys it unattended. Because usually there's error handling, there's things that you need to do.
Is there any guardrails, for example, like keeping a users from trying to use an Excel file on the LAN share, and so one writes a variable and another one picks up the wrong variable type of thing?
No, there's no such limitations. Again, what Studio X does is it automates things that you could already do. So if me as a user, I have a shared Excel file with you, we would run into the same problem as humans, not as robots. So the robots would pick up on those problems as well. Yeah. So there's no locking mechanism. You could probably implement something, but it would be weird. Yeah.
Question.
So, are you whitelisting these things? We can only use the whitelisted applications right now?
No, right now you can use anything you want. It's just like Studio. We are looking in the future to giving the COE members the ability to say, here are the 5 apps that you can use, and here are the 5 websites that you should never automate because they already sued us for automating or whatever reason. Some of you can relate to that.
In Studio, right here.
Yep, okay.
In Studio, we define the scope of our variables. How is this working here?
So there's no variables really. I mean, what I did here was I used Excel as like a temporary variable type thing. You do have this concept of you can read a value from the screen and then you can just say, I want to save this for later. I want to use it later, and then you use it. We have these capabilities, and everything is. You can think about those as global variables, if you want. So there's no scope. Again, something that's confusing the hell out of business users. The second you start talking about, oh, this variable is only available in this sequence, not in that sequence, they go crazy. Yeah.
Is there a way to control who has access to Studio X versus Studio?
Control, yeah, through the license. So if I have a Studio license, I have both. If I have a Studio X license, I have only Studio X, and I can't switch to Studio. And switching is very easy. I mean, I go here under Home, Settings, License Profile, Viewer Change. I have Studio X. That's it? We're good? OK, we'll be around. We have the booth, the Studio and Studio X booths. They're in the booth area. And if you have more questions, you know how to find us. Thank you.